Yeah. Hey, everybody. Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Group. And today is Tuesday, 10 a.m., Hometown Heroes. And Mary and Rick, y'all have a special guest.
We do.
Last show of the year.
Last
It's the
show,
26th.
26th edition. And today we have Colonel Lewis Knapp, United States Army retired. And he's been in the area about 2 years since he retired.
About 2 years, yep.
And he hails from Trent, Texas, the home of the Mighty Gorillas.
The Mighty Gorillas,
the
that's right.
Six-man football team. Trent is out just west of Abilene, between Abilene and Sweetwater.
It is, yep.
So we're glad to have you today.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We just finished Christmas, had a great bike drive.
Yes.
Over 600 bikes
Yes.
went out to a lot of children.
And we're getting photos of those children.
And yesterday, I got some photos from Carrie Ortigal from Holidays and Heroes. Somebody had sent her some pictures of some kids that morning opening those presents that we gave out at NASJRB. So that was exciting. You know, I looked at that and kind of teared up a little bit because that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
How many
almost.
families did she end up
I
getting?
think it was 187. It might have been
It
even
was-
191.
it was
by
in
the
there.
You told
time
her
it
it's
was
going to be
all
close
done.
to 200.
It was
Yeah, she
almost
told me it was my
200.
fault.
Yeah.
But she caught me at the Air Power Foundation Christmas party and said that I jinxed her, but really helping that many families. I think she said because they had a couple come in after the fact.
Right.
I think she said it ended up being 191 total that they helped. A couple of families came in after.
And they got a lot of presents, too. I
They
saw
did.
that.
A lot of presents.
Very impressive event.
Yeah.
I'd never been, in 27 years of my military career, I don't know about you, Mary, I never saw anything like that. Almost 1,000 people in the hangar.
Yeah.
Every family had a table. That's Fort Worth. I mean, to me, that's the people that
You're
are
right.
here. That was the comment I heard many times from the active duty folks that were here,
Right.
that were stationed here. We've never seen anything like this. So
Yeah.
kudos to Carrie. She did an amazing job, and all her volunteers.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and I've had airmen that were helped by her organization. Carrie was, of course, our honorary commander at Security Forces when I was the first sergeant at the 301st Security Forces, and then she was honorary group commander when I was at the Aircraft Maintenance Squadron as the first sergeant. So I've had, I've been around Carrie a long time, and I've had airmen actually helped that, and I shared some of those stories when she was on of the airmen that I had. And this year when I got my family, it happened to be that it was an airman that was one of my airmen when I
Oh,
was his
man,
first
that's
sergeant. He
fantastic.
doesn't know that because of course I didn't put my name with anything, but I
Right.
knew him, so I knew his family and I knew his
Yeah.
situation because as his first sergeant, of course, I was aware of
Yeah.
his
That's
Of
situation.
his
great.
need.
And Lewis and his wife Shelley,
Yeah.
you were there for the present giveaway at
Yep.
NASJRB. And Shelley is a veteran. She's a Marine Corps veteran.
She is.
Right.
She sends her regrets. She wanted to be here, just not feeling well this morning. And last night, right after Christmas, she got a bug or something. But she was honor graduate out of Parris Island, did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then I met her right out of college. So she made the best Army wife you could ever imagine. She was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because,
she's an
Mary
amazing person.
and myself have both been spouses of veterans, so
Right.
we kind of can
Yeah.
identify with her being, a great
Yeah.
supporter.
That she absolutely. She was in the Marines essentially while I was in college. So she understood more than I did what the military was like,
Right.
because I was a cadet in Abilene. I didn't know what was going on. So all the Abilene girls were, a little shy about leaving Abilene, so to speak. And Shelley said, "Let's go, man." I got Germany as my first assignment, and she was very excited to go. And
You
we
were
met
the
and married in
Army
about 5
R-
months.
The Army ROTC.
Army ROTC. Yeah, there was a
The Air Force
tri-college
has a big
program.
presence out there with DICE.
With DICE, they do, and a lot of Air Force J ROTC out there. The program closed, I think, in 2005 or 6, but it was a tri-college program. So it was Abilene Christian, Hardin-Simmons, McMurray University, I
Abilene's
think
a
in
big
Howard Payne
college
and
town.
Brownwood. It's growing. It's growing in stature and size. It used to be kind of quiet little school out there, Abilene in general, but in particular ACU has really put itself on the map with the
They really
quality of
have.
students. It has, yeah. They're
I
a
went to
fantastic
Abilene
school.
once.
Did you?
Yeah, it was I'll tell you the story. I actually was active duty Air Force. I retrained out of admin into training, so I was becoming an on-the-job training manager, which is what I did for a lot of years. Was run training programs, and it was I think 82. I think it was 81 or 82, and I was at tech school at Wichita Falls. And some girl that was in my class for one weekend, for some reason, she said, and she knew, she must have known Abilene, because I guess there was some dance place there. But she said, we're going to go
Few
to
of 'em.
Abilene this weekend. And the way she
Was
said
it the
it,
Ponderosa Club?
I don't even remember. Might have been. But it was so funny because she was so southern, and I was from the suburbs of Chicago.
Oh my goodness.
And she says, Abilene. And the way she said it, I would tease her all the time about Abilene. And then as we're driving down there, of course, I saw a lot of cornfields and soybeans at Chanute Air Force Base in Rantoul, Illinois. But I had never seen cotton, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
And she said, well, that's cotton. And she pulled off on the side of the road so that I could go out there and see cotton.
And actually,
because I had
yeah,
never seen that
That's
before.
yeah, the cotton fields all the way
yeah.
down both sides of I-20.
Yeah. It was
right
really,
through there.
it
Yeah.
was funny.
I hoed cotton,
Mm-hmm.
tamped cotton, worked the cotton every Christmas, a couple of summers. That's hard work.
It is.
Yeah.
A lot of our prisoners here in Texas have done the same thing.
Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah.
Everybody ought to try to pick cotton with their fingers
Yeah.
just once to get an appreciation of those burrs and how difficult that is and how much we appreciate the machinery now.
Right,
Our ag
right.
teacher made us go out there for 1 hour and pick cotton just so we would have
Oh,
an
I can't
appreciation.
imagine.
So we just came in with bloody fingers and
Yeah.
burrs. But yeah, ag is huge there,
Right.
in a small school, small town. So a lot of influence there. Stock show's a big thing.
Sure.
Fort Worth and San Antonio were our big shows to go to back then. You can imagine that. I graduated with 10 people. There were about 70 in the high school. So to come to Fort Worth or go to San Antonio was a big deal. Yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah. But there's cotton gin going, at that time. Now it's shut down. But yeah, cotton ran that town for a while. Yeah. Most of the farmers were cotton farmers. So.
A lot of people commute to Abilene now, don't they? I mean, they just
Sure.
work in Abilene.
Yep. A lot of the agricultural, it's so much agriculture there and oil. There's a lot of oil there too. So there's a lot of field service and oil field service type
Right.
businesses in Abilene on top of the agriculture. But yeah, if you're a kid growing up there, you're working in agriculture or you're driving into Abilene or maybe Sweetwater, for a part-time job. Yep. It was a great place to grow up. I lived in Fort Worth in junior high and then moved to Trent. So I was the kind of the city kid in Trent and had never shown animals or didn't really know what FFA was or six-man football. I thought, what? I came from Leonard Middle School and was the quarterback for the junior high team there. So all I had known was really 11-man and watching the Cowboys. And I thought, six-man, what is this about? But
Right.
I grew to love it. It's kind of like fast break football.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
You play the
Yeah.
whole game too, don't you?
The
Just
whole
about?
game.
Yeah.
My freshman year, we had several injuries, and we had 9 people. We were down to 9 people. So I was doing kickoffs and extra points and going both ways, but it was good. It was a good time. We had maybe 4,000 people at the last playoff game against Panther Creek when I was a senior in high school, which was pretty substantial for a 6-man football game. back
Friday
then.
night football in Texas.
Right.
Whole town
Nothing
shuts
like it.
down.
Nothing
it
like
was
it.
fantastic. Yep, loved it.
I had a friend of mine that he was on the, I met him when he came to Fort Worth. He was, what's the school in Midland and Odette? Permian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
he
the
said,
Permian.
he said, I used to love to go to the grocery market for my mom because I didn't have to push the basket. The people there would say, hey, they recognized he was a player. And
Yeah.
he said, and they made that movie Friday Night Lights after those kids.
They had a
They did.
powerhouse there.
That's when
Yeah,
I
they
was
did.
in high school.
Yeah.
In 89, 88.
Yeah,
That's when they.
that's
when
exactly
they.
right.
That's when they were rock stars.
He said we were bigger than if a Dallas Cowboy had come into town, they would have cozied up to us before they would a Cowboy. And he
Yeah.
said we did everything. And he said all you had to do is play the part, don't drink in front of the older folks and go to church on Sunday and play football.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Every
special.
small town would shut down on Friday night,
Oh yeah.
all across West Texas.
Oh yeah.
And the camera crews from the 2 or 3 stations in Fort Worth, Dallas would just send their crews out all over those small town roads to get little clips and then come back and do the football show. And we would all record it. And then we'd run home that night and see if we made TV, you know.
I was
that night in
booking.
Abilene.
I was booking bets back then, and I got to get some of those oil guys out there. They were betting $10,000 on Permian.
Oh my
High school
goodness.
football, $10,000 bet.
Yeah, oil that was booming then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I
And
think
those
before the
oil
bust.
companies, you know, would kind of move the dads around that had good players.
Sure.
And, you know, they might transfer them from Oklahoma out to Odessa so Odessa could have, that guy on their team. So.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
But you went from the cotton fields of Trent into the Army?
I
And-
went to school at Abilene,
Yeah.
so did ROTC, was on an ROTC scholarship there at Abilene. Chuck Freeman, who recently joined Roll Call and the Fort Worth Air Power Council, was also there with me, retired colonel, neat guy. He was my battalion commander
Was he
at
really?
Abilene, yeah, and an Abilene Christian grad. But got my commission in '93, and then went to officer basic training in Virginia for transportation in the Army. So I was commissioned on the same day I graduated. My granddad actually pinned my bars on, was Lieutenant Colonel. He was the deputy base commander here at Carswell
Was he really?
back in the day, and he was a World War II and Korea vet.
Wow.
That was a proud
Distinguished
moment
Flying
for him.
Cross, Purple Heart, B-24 pilot, amazing guy. He was the star of that commissioning ceremony because he came in uniform, and all of the cadre were just all over him, and he hadn't worn it in, I don't know, a couple of decades. So it was very cool to get, and he's obviously since passed, but that was a special day. Yeah, not only to graduate from college, but for me, that my family, that was a big deal. I was the first, but for my granddad to be there and
That was special.
pin on the butter bars, that was pretty
Yeah.
special. Absolutely, and swear me in. So his signature is,
Is that-
official
Oh, that's awesome.
on my paperwork, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But so finished at Abilene, started my career, was in 27 years total. The first assignment was in Virginia at officer training for transportation. They call it logistics now.
Right.
They've kind of looped in the quartermaster, ordnance, transporters, and call them all logistics, which they are, but they used to have individual branches. Now they have one logistics branch. But went to-
Logistics is pretty important.
is very
Oh, yeah,
important.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't
Very
realize that.
important. Yeah, most
That's how you get
Army
things in people
divisions
places.
can work on their own for a few days, maybe a week
But you got to have all the
or
supplies.
two.
and the-
At the most, they just don't. They're not built to carry all of that
fuel
with
and-
them. Yeah.
Weren't
So-
you in charge of that?
The-
Several places?
Well, so my first assignment as a first sergeant was as the 301st Logistics Readiness Squadron. So we had the different groups. We had supply, we had transportation. So we took care of the vehicle maintenance and the vehicle operation. So if you needed a vehicle or if you needed it worked on, and the fuels people, the fuels were pretty
Yep,
important because you can't get the the planes aren't
Can't
going to
move
go
without it.
anywhere.
Yep.
So it really boils down to being very interdependent. Where I used to tell the flyers, and the maintenance people, they have names for the folks that aren't part of maintenance, and those of us in the military have all heard those. But my point to them was always, you can't get where you need to go without all of this support behind you. Because if you don't have these guys, we provided in LRS, we provided, to your point, we provided all the supplies. You need stuff to deploy. You need stuff to do your operations. You're going to get that from supply.
Yeah.
You're going to get your transportation needs met. So it is incredibly
Yeah.
integral to the operation of whatever branch you're in.
Absolutely. And it starts at home. I mean, that
Right.
logistics tail goes all the way from maybe a seaport of
You have
debarkation
to have the
where you're going to have
right stuff at the right place at
Yeah.
the right time.
You're going to have Army guys, Army colonels in charge typically of that port, military port, pushing even a commercial port. They'll put an 05 or an 06 in charge of that port to push all the military equipment out. So that log tail is long, is strategic, all the way to where we're going,
Yeah.
to a port on the other side, and then of course, through at least on the Army side, through the corps, the division, the brigade, all the way down to
Yeah.
a company level, you're working logistics. And
Yeah, even getting the people to and from the war zone
Yeah.
is all part
Yeah.
of the Loggie's job.
my first
that's what a
deployment
Loggie
was
does.
to Bosnia, and we were in Hungary before most of the warfighters even got there yet. We set up a ribbon bridge, the engineers did, across the Sava River. And I was with the movement control, like a traffic management type organization. So we kind of did all of who came in and tracking them all and telling the commanders where everybody was on the battlefield. We had to stop everything we were doing and kind of clear the roads and make way so the first of Cav, the 1-1 Cav, could come through and make history and go across the river. And we just kind of rolled our eyes like, we've been here for 3 weeks.
Right.
Already making all this happen so you
Right.
guys can roll across the bridge with your guide on,
Yeah.
But logistics is important. It really is. We don't get all the glory, quite as much, but
But you're a
we're
pretty big
certainly
target in war. when
close
you
to
got
the
a
fight
tanker
these
full of
days, even more
fuel.
so than in the past. Yeah, right there that's where a lot of the casualties have been in recent
Yep.
wars. Has
For
been
sure.
logistics
supply
casualties on
lines.
supply lines, trucks, right?
Yeah.
IEDs.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people forget
supply
about
lines.
the war in Bosnia and the Serbs and all that, but they had a pretty big war going on there for a while. A lot of people got killed.
Yeah, they did. That became the largest. It was I believe, NATO's first large deployment. It was the largest deployment for U.S. forces out of Europe since World War II. So it was a really big deal for us to move en masse with other nations through Europe and set up that theater. And we were essentially there to stop the fighting because the Serbs and the Croats and Serbo-Muslims, the Croat Muslims, they were all killing each other. It was awful. Balkanization is a word that came out of that, which is basically just separating based on your ethnicity. So we kind of went in there and separated the parties, if you will, and it's been actually very peaceful since then. There's little incursions from time to time. Kosovo was a little bit after that, generally part of that same conflict, but that's where World War I started, in Sarajevo in the Balkans. So history repeats itself, and it did a little bit down there. But it's very interesting. I was only maybe a year in and separated for a year from Shelley. Came home for 10 days of R&R because you got 14 days. It took 2 days to get home and 2 days to get back. And Shelley got pregnant in those 10 days. And she told me the 10th night or the 9th night, she said, I think I'm pregnant. And I said, is that possible? How do you? I've been gone for a little while, is that? And she said, I just have a feeling. I said, well, let me know. I'll get back with you tomorrow. And I did, from Philadelphia on the way back. And she was pregnant.
Wow.
So I missed the whole pregnancy, 8.5 months. My daughter came 5 weeks early, who's now a Fort Worth teacher,
Wow.
8th grade English teacher here. And she was born on December 7th of
Pearl
96 on Pearl Harbor Day. So that's a good day for us. I know it's a day that will live in infamy for everybody else.
Birthday.
Yeah, but what a joy to come home. And I made the birth by about 4 hours. My command let me come home early.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, about a week early. We were already scheduled to be back, but Shelley and I thought we'd be back and reintegrate with each other for a month, and Katie thought otherwise. So
Yeah. You didn't have the technology we have today. At least my last few deployments, we could, we couldn't get them home, but we sure could get them off work in some place
Right.
with a computer
with
where
the
they
video
could
or
be
something.
there.
Yeah.
Well, they're not
Yeah.
there, but they're there.
No,
And
yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
you didn't have that technology.
I would have
back then.
missed it if we hadn't have already been leaving the theater. Our unit was already there to replace us. We were about 4 or 5 days maybe from departing. So I just got there a little bit early. But I'm grateful to my commander, Mike Lally, who became a 3-star. He was the Transcom actual deputy,
Oh.
worked with Air Force quite a bit. Neat guy, and he kicked me out, and I barely made it, but I'm really thankful I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, that was the first deployment. Long year, but you know, being away from your family that first time, that first Christmas away, you're missing everything. That's tough. My son-in-law is in Djibouti right now. My daughter married a Marine. Imagine that. And then he was actually active duty Marines, and then went to school with his GI Bill at TCU, made one semester last year at TCU, joined the Army Reserve. I'd like to take a little credit for that. And then got called up. So he's deployed now in Djibouti and kind of bouncing around that theater a little bit. He'll be home in February. But it runs in the family, you know, this business. So it's interesting to me that my daughter ends up marrying, you know, a soldier, a Marine, both actually in her case. So kind of neat, because her mom was a Marine, I was Army, and then she marries a Marine who became an Army soldier. So it's kind of coming full circle.
So then you had another deployment to Iraq?
I did in '07
Okay.
during the surge, which many might remember. That was sort of the turning point at the time in Iraq. President Bush had authorized to send maybe another 40,000 or so troops over there to quell kind of what was happening. General Petraeus was in charge. So I worked for Petraeus. I was on his staff, about 1,000 people on his staff. Not his personal staff, but on his logistics staff. Neat guy, amazing
Doesn't he have a
leader.
Fort Worth tie or something? Or
I don't know of one. He might. I would like to know it. If somebody
somebody
knows
told
what
me
that
that
is.
he had family here, or he was here, or
He was in Dallas not long ago, and we got to
maybe
chat
it's
again.
Dallas.
He came and spoke at a Defense Series briefing there, so I got to see him for a little bit.
What a
and
great
chit-chat with
guy.
him. Yeah, brilliant. He's still involved, still talking about Ukraine on Facebook a lot, on LinkedIn a lot. I think he's right up there with some of the greatest generals we've ever had.
Yeah.
He was very popular even, back then in the middle of the war. At the 4-star headquarters, once a month, he would do pictures with people in his command conference room with the flags and his professional photographer and a room about this size. And the line, it would take 2 or 3 hours to get to him. I couldn't do it until right before I left. He would put the people who were rotating out. If you were rotating out, like in the next week or two, you got to go toward the front of the line. So that's the only reason I got a really great picture with him. Professional shot, and that's one of my favorites from that deployment. But that was during the surge. That was May of '07 to May of '08. And it's funny.
You crossed paths.
Yeah,
Kinda,
did we?
sorta. Well, my husband
Yeah.
was at Balad.
Okay.
F-16s,
I was in Baghdad.
in May
Yeah.
of in '07. He went in '07. So
Yeah.
my husband was in Iraq and my son was in Afghanistan.
Oh my
At
goodness.
the same time?
Yeah, that's crazy. I want to hear about that too. I remember it being, it was pretty lively, let's say, the first 6 months. But around Christmas and into the new year, it started getting a little bit quieter, and that's because the surge was working. What General Petraeus, the changes that he had made, he was getting people out of their vehicles. Force protection, people were really concerned about U.S. troops. We'd had a lot of casualties at that time. But General Petraeus wanted them to see us and meet us and us to be out and among them, not in vehicles riding through the town, So he changed a lot of things at the tactical level, operational level. He had written the whole counterinsurgency book when he was back at Fort Leavenworth in between his deployments, and then came to Iraq and implemented those. So pretty neat guy, yeah. And I'm just glad he's still around, and I think he's one of the greats. I know he screwed up a little bit when he was the CIA director, but in his personal life. But I think professionally and as a general, I don't know that we've had a more brilliant tactician and operator and supporter of the military as well in modern times. Maybe like a Colin Powell, Schwarzkopf. Those are probably the top 3 modern generals to me. But yeah, what a great guy to get to work for.
Sure.
We did some neat things down there. He wanted the shipping lanes opened. There were ships, old ships from the Iran War back in the '80s that were just covered the Tigris and Euphrates. There was no way a large roll-on, roll-off strategic type ship could get into or anywhere close to the port in the south near Basra for years because of the shipwrecks that were in there. So we pulled, and I was a transportation guy, and I was there to close bases. That was my thing. I was his base closure guy. So we closed about 3 bases, but it was a surge. So there were more troops. Things were growing. The ones we closed, we just kind of moved around. So we were doing other things. And one of those things I got to do was raise ships out of the Tigris and Euphrates and plan that and work with salvage divers and the Navy and do some very cool stuff.
Well,
You just don't get to do here at home, you know.
The Navy had to kind of go back to school, the brown water Navy,
Yeah.
because they weren't used to,
Being on the rivers.
done that in Vietnam.
Right.
And one of our members, Rex King, Donna Snow's husband, he was kind of, I don't know how they did it, but they recalled him or something. He was in the Navy and had to go train the troops over there, the Navy, in the Brown Water River Navy, so they could go function in Iraq. So.
Yeah. Army transportation has hundreds of vessels and boats, brown water types.
You don't think about that.
People don't, but we can have on the Army side, the Navy can park a mile offshore if there's not an improved port in some country and do what we call logistics over the shore, which they will create a pier where there's not one in a third world beachhead. And then round robin these vessels that hold, they're kind of like Saving Private Ryan, what you think of, that hold the troops, but they hold tanks and they're larger in equipment. And they will go out to the boat where there's a floating pier off of the edge of the boat. They'll drive that equipment off onto that little floating pier, put it on the boat, and then just round robin, all the way to the pier. And so that's another way that you can get equipment where you don't have a strategic type pier or asset. But that's all Army, logistics, not Navy. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
You think the Navy would be doing that, or the Seabees?
You
Yeah.
think so?
Right.
Yeah. They don't like the brown water stuff as much. It's not as sexy, I don't think.
No, I'm sure it's not.
As the blue water stuff, but yeah.
So after Iraq, then you went to. Did you do some time in Washington?
I did toward the end of my career. My last 2 assignments were as a congressional liaison and as brigade commander, of public affairs, actually, brigade. The congressional liaison job I was assigned to D.C., but I had duty in California. So the Army has a big presence on the Hill, hundreds of officers enlisted that help with the legislation and, tell the Army story on the Hill. But there's a handful of us that are out in the field working the district offices. And what we found was that we could get better access to members of Congress and their staff in the field while they're at home. They're just kind of in their sports coat and, we have to get on a schedule and wait 3 months and get through handlers and all that kind of stuff on the Hill. But, Kay Granger out here, I could call Charlie or, Crippler, one of the folks there at the office and get on her schedule and tell her what was going on, You can't lobby in the Army, obviously, but you can tell them what your challenges are and tell them your story. You can invite them to activities.
But you work for specific representatives?
But
Or
I was in the Army. I was in Army Blues every time I would come and see them, majority of the time. Sometimes in a suit. If I was on the Hill, certainly I would work in a suit. Or if we were with staffers, sometimes we would just wear a suit. But it was an Army job, so I didn't work with them. I actually was an Army guy getting on their calendar, telling the Army story, and showing them equipment, for instance, new equipment that they had voted for or provided for us in an appropriations bill. So they could actually come out and see and climb on it and watch it work and set up tours of them for Army bases and that sort of thing out here. It was a great job. It was just telling the Army story, telling them what we were doing and how we were doing it, and getting their assistance where we needed, if we needed. They would oftentimes ask, what do you need? What do you really tell me exactly what you need. Is this working for you, or is this working, or what's not working? And I would bring commanders to them. I'm a liaison guy, so I would bring the brigade commander or the local battalion commander, have them sit down, and that many times resulted in some additional equipment maybe in the next year, or some things that we needed for some helicopters, for the Guard, even for rescue missions and that sort of thing. They needed some kind of specialty equipment, and they got to tell their story and talk about what they needed. And it takes a little while. You can't just, make that thing sort of
That's
thing
what's
happen
so
quickly.
important.
Such a
like
great
whenever
job.
we see
Loved it.
some of our representatives going out to the base out here at
Right.
NASJRB, so they can see firsthand where
Yep.
the money's going, what the equipment is doing, and what the needs are. So.
Yep. And we're very lucky here in Fort Worth to have Congresswoman Granger. She's done so much. I'm not on her staff, not a paid political ad. She has been phenomenal
You
for
know, she
Fort
was
Worth.
my world history teacher.
Was she really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. She's the mayor too, I believe,
Yeah.
of Fort
She's the mayor,
Worth, right?
She was a teacher
Um,
at Richland High School, and then the year after us, she became mayor. She used to tell us this is just a stopping over point.
Yeah,
And I
that's
sat
great.
down with her on a stage. We were both on the same speaking deal. And I said, we had split lunch. You'd go, then you'd go eat lunch, then you come back. And I said, I never came back. She said, guess what? We didn't either. She said, I had all the football players. And I said, but you passed us. She said, y'all were before no pass, no play.
No play, yeah.
She said the coach would come by and say, I've got them all in your class. You got to pass them all.
Oh,
And she said, I never went back either. I'd go to lunch and mess around till my next class.
What high school was that?
Richland High School,
Okay, here in Fort Worth.
here in
Yeah.
Richland Hills.
Oh, Richland Hills, yeah.
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 But she was my world history teacher.
But a lot of people, Rick, to that point where you bring up that it's important to talk about those stories and what you did. When in 2009, I went to Germany. I was at Ramstein, and I was part of the protocol team for the 4-star general, the USAFE general. And it was one of the other folks on the team one day. It was a colonel, a lieutenant colonel. I was talking to him because nobody ever really explained to us what we were exactly, because we did a lot of congressional delegations, CODELs. So they'd come in, so it would be congressmen, so-and-so's CODEL was coming in. We had all kinds of code names for them, and they'd hit the red carpet, and we'd take them to Larmsey,
Yeah.
Landstuhl. We'd take them, all over the place. We'd take them out for a meal. So we did all that kind of stuff. And one day he was explaining it to me, and he said, well, why don't you think about it? The reason that we do all of this is because we need them to see what the dollars they're voting for in Congress, why they matter, what they're going for. And if we don't show them, how do they know? And then how do they advocate for our needs? And it really kind of tied, because I was kind of like, why are we, this just seems like, we're in the middle of a war. My son at the time was at his second time in Afghanistan. And we got all this stuff going on, and we're worried about these congressmen and women coming through here and doing a tour of the facilities and the different events and activities, and what's the purpose in that. So when he explained that, it made more sense that we have to give them our story.
Right.
Why do we need this stuff? What is it doing for us? And look, you did give us this stuff, and this is how we're using it. And so it made more sense to me. It made it more impactful for me for what I was doing at the time.
They have very few, like a general, like a 4-star general, or so, they have a few touch points. They might come to theater and get a few briefings. They may be less than 24 hours. So they get on the ground, they get a few little touch points, they talk to a few soldiers, they get a few briefings, and they leave. And those are really important in terms of shaping their thoughts about things.
Right.
So I didn't do it downrange, but I did it here, and that was a pretty cool job.
Yeah.
Yep. To get to do that.
Yeah.
The last job was Brigade Command. That was a very unique brigade that had public affairs units primarily. So about 12 public affairs units, 4 or 5 military history detachments, some chaplain detachments, some very cool, unique capabilities. But that was also telling a story. There were broadcast units, photographers, AFN types, like Armed Forces Radio. They could go and set up. Very talented people. Most of them were music types on the civilian side as well. Many, these were reserve units, even though I was active duty. So that was a very unique opportunity to get to work with real professionals. Also 3 Army bands. I had 3 Army bands. And those are some unique individuals, those Army band types. Most of them are music teachers, professionals, PhDs, the military history detachments, PhDs in history. They had a very unique mission. They would go over, gather information, interview 4 stars, come back to the Center for Military History, and then write the history of that particular, theater that they were in. So it was fun, but I was tired. I knew. Just like you, Mary, probably, you knew when it was time.
To go, huh?
Well, I
It was
didn't
time
have
for me.
choice.
I was scheduled
I
to go
got
to the
too old.
Pentagon, and I thought, nope, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was nice to be able to.
And you retired. Now you're
Retire
staying
my
pretty busy,
terms.
aren't you?
Yes, yeah. My mantra has been to keep serving, so I find ways in the community to keep serving veterans and active duty troops.
You joined the Fort Worth Air Power Council.
Have recently.
member of that.
Charlie supported my nomination to the Air Power Council, great organization that supports the
Charlie
base.
Cripliver.
Charlie Cripliver, Congresswoman Granger's district director here, great guy.
He used to be a policeman.
He
He was
did.
he was her
He
bodyguard
did. Yep.
whenever she was mayor. So
Yep.
Charlie's awesome.
He's amazing. he's become a really good friend. But the USS Fort Worth Support Committee, we have a ship out in San Diego called the USS Fort Worth, named the USS Fort Worth. That's in large part because of Kay Granger as well.
A big part
And-
of it.
Yeah, huge. I mean, it wouldn't have happened without her. And so there's a support committee that
do you
supports
go
the
out?
sailors.
You've gone out there to the
I have
ship?
only been on the committee for a year, and
Okay.
we haven't made that trip. I
There's
hope
the
to.
cap right up there,
But
isn't it?
yeah, the Fort Worth, the USS Fort, there is, I
It is
believe.
right
Yep,
there.
yep.
Nice.
LCS-3, it's a littoral combat ship. They come in and they get the royal treatment every quarter. They're sailors of the quarter. They're skipper. They take them to the Fort Worth Stock Show. When the stock show, I think that's the next time they're going to be in town. They're going to I was talking to Mary about
Right.
trying to get them to roll call.
That'll be next month.
Wouldn't that
Yeah,
be
that'll be
cool?
next month
Yeah.
at the end of the
I think
month.
Military Day at the rodeo is the
Yep.
30th. There's
Yep.
free tickets for that. so
Well,
Yep.
the
for
tickets,
veterans.
from what I understand, the tickets are all gone.
Oh, they
Like,
are?
by the time I sent
Okay.
the thing out, most of the folks said, if you didn't get them already, they're gone. Like,
Okay.
Yeah,
they-
for the military night.
Yeah, we
Yep.
need to definitely know the opening day of that so we can advertise it. But
Yeah.
that's what Lewis and I have a couple of emails back and forth about. If they're here and they get here in time for the 27th, have them at the roll call luncheon and let them, introduce the folks and give them some time to get some appreciation
Yep.
before they're then at the rodeo on that
How
Monday
many
night.
usually come in?
There's usually about 7 or
Okay.
8.
Just a
There's
small group.
small groups,
Yeah.
the skipper, the chief, and then maybe 4 or 5 sailors.
Not like Fleet Day whenever they all converge on.
It's just that
New York
small
City
group,
area.
but because it's that small group, they see the congresswoman, they see the mayor, they volunteer at the Tarrant Food Bank, Meals on Wheels. We've just got them scheduled from A to Z, and they leave with smiles on their faces and the Fort Worth hospitality shown to them. They're not even from here, they're many times from the Midwest or somewhere, but they get that dose of Fort Worth hospitality when they come. And the Navy says that we are by far the best support group of any ship that they have,
I
because
think
we
Fort Worth in
they
general
do a
is just a
bang-up
good
job.
supporter of
Just
our
awesome.
military.
Yeah,
and our
absolutely.
veterans.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities. Roll call, obviously, the Air Power Council, the USS Fort Worth Support Committee. There are probably 40 or 50 different charities in Dallas Fort Worth for military service members to support them in some way. Carrie's organization, Holidays and Heroes. I'm learning about new ones, and I've been here 2 years, and many of them I'm,
Yeah, there's
getting
so many.
engaged with, but this is a very special place that supports their military. And the little quiet base out there, JRB has got a strategic mission, and the F-35s are coming to a guard unit out there.
Sure.
To the reserve
Obviously,
unit.
to the reserve the Air
The
Force
301st.
Reserve. Yep.
Right. Let's not get confused.
The
yeah.
Guard and Reserve, true.
The Guard has the 130s, the Air
Yeah,
Force
yeah.
Reserve
And they've
has
got the new J's, I think, too. The Guard
Yeah,
unit
they
does
did.
there
They
as
did.
well. Yeah. So probably even before some of the active duty guys get those assets, we get them. But special place. We love it here, and love serving, and have a lot of opportunities to keep serving.
You're working with a jail too.
Yeah, Tarrant County Jail. There's a program called Pathways to Hope. It's part of a nonprofit called One Community USA. It's Tony Brinker's asset. She's a widow of T. Boone Pickens and kind of the Chili's founder.
Yeah.
Brinker, I think, was the last name.
Yeah.
And just a patriot, this lady, and she supports financially and with her time and her energy in a lot of different charities. And she put Tom Cruise in charge of this outfit called Pathways under her umbrella, and started at Tarrant. It's worked its way into Dallas, but it's a reintegration program for incarcerated individuals.
And you
Many
go-
of those are the veterans.
You go to the military pod. Is that
The military pod, they have about typically 15 to 30
And they-
veterans at
they've
any
had-
given
they've had
time.
the military pod for a long time.
They do, and that is I hadn't been into a jail since touring a prison, like back in high school. It's a rough place, but when you go to the vet pod, they have painting up on the 82nd, the 101st. There's some Air Force up. They have every branch represented there, and they all want to come back and reintegrate successfully in this program. We'll see how it works out. We're trying to cut the recidivism rate there to virtually zero. And I was at the Armed Forces Bowl this weekend and I teach a class there, a couple classes there. I'm on their board while they're in jail. And then there's some training after they get out as well. And one of the guys, he's all covered up, is freezing, right? Second coldest bowl game in history, the Armed Forces Bowl. Of course, it's in Fort Worth,
Yeah,
which is great
yeah.
with
You expect
Lockheed.
it.
But one of those guys came up to me, and I was walking through the stadium and trying to stay warm, and just said, "Hey, do you remember me? I appreciate what you did." And it made my whole day, just seeing that guy out in the community working. He was working with the stadium. It was a brief engagement, but to see him there, when the last time I saw him was with a shaved head, in an orange jumpsuit, was very encouraging.
That's
So
good.
they're always looking for veteran mentors and trainers for that program. The sheriff is fully on board, Sheriff
Wayburn.
Wayburn,
Yeah.
who comes to roll call. I saw
Yeah,
him a
yeah.
couple times, the sheriff. He's fully on board. He comes and speaks at the graduation, as does Miss Brinker and others. So it's just a fantastic program, a second chance kind of program for these veterans.
Yeah, Don Graves, he's going to kind of be out of commission for a little bit this month.
Well, we're
Or-
still working on the date. He might be out of commission in February.
Okay.
Don.
But
What's
Don's
he got
amazing.
going?
I've been working with
Got some cataract and
Oh.
eye stuff.
I've been working with Bill Wayborn
Mm.
and his staff, because we're going to have Don go up there to talk to the guys in the military pod.
Yeah, they
They're-
would
They're
love
anxious to
that.
get him up there, but
Yeah.
we've kind of
Yeah, we may do January because so far it looks
That's good
like
to know
the
because-
procedure may be pushed till.
okay.
So he's got to do some lower eyelid stuff first, and then they can do his cataracts. But they want to protect his eyes. His daughter told me, the doctor said he has the retinas of a 25-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
He's unbelievable.
He
And he'll be
is.
98
He's-
in May.
yeah, I forget
like a
where
machine.
I heard him sing.
God
I
bless
guess everybody
America.
on this knows who Don Graves is, but
Everybody.
Yeah.
He's been on
Iwo Jima
several
survivor,
times.
right? Amazing. Carried a flamethrower about half his weight on Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
Still singing "God Bless America" and the national anthem at multiple events. And
Yeah.
another charity that I work with is called Our Community Salutes. We put on a couple events a year for high school seniors that are
he
enlisting.
Was real I think
He
he
came
went
and
there.
sang.
Yeah, I took him.
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Yeah, and what an amazing event. We're doing those again in May. We hope Don will be there to sing. We're hoping to get one of the Medal of Honor recipients, the award named after. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but we're really excited about that. It's a great community event. We do one in Fort Worth, one in Dallas, because the kids who are enlisting, they really don't get any recognition. The high schools are hit or miss about that. Some of them might get a little cord at graduation to wear around their neck. Most don't even get that. So we honor them and their families for their decision to serve. And what the recruiters have told us, and we do it for the recruiters, we also do it for them, but it helps the ship rates. The recruiters told us, and I didn't know this until we started this, that they lose about 15% of those kids
Oh,
that
yeah.
raise their hands. They don't get on the bus. You know, they sign up, they swear in,
Do the
they go
whole
to
thing,
MEPS,
yeah.
and when it comes time to ship, they miss it. And you know, I thought maybe the MPs would come knocking on your door if
No.
that
No.
happened.
No.
But they don't. The Army and all the military services lose a lot of money when that happens. So in addition to honoring them and their families, this also puts them, at least on the Army side, about 99% ship rate. So to move from 85, 90 to almost 100%, because they see mom and dad and Uncle Jim, they all come around. Maybe he had a bad experience in Vietnam and he talked his nephew out of it or something, but they come and they see the community there in support of them. And celebrities, we try to get as many people as we can. We get the governor on video. It's a neat event, and we're really trying to get the public to the next events, because we have all the family members, all the recruiters, the educators. They're all there, school board members, city council, but we want to get more public people
Yeah.
there to just come and be encouraged and encourage these young people. So
Yeah,
Don
and this-
sang at that,
And this will
it
be
blew
your
me
third
away.
year, right?
This will be
Doing
the
it?
third year. It's called Our Community Salutes.
So I think year after year, you get more and more people that will
Sure.
Yeah.
understand it's
Because
happening.
more and more people know about
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
We
It's
we
got to
can
start
kinda tie in
somewhere.
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we can help tie
Yeah,
some
yep,
into
yep,
that
yeah,
too.
and we're and
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of roll call. I think the first year that
Right.
we did it, roll call blew me away. Walking into a room with 300 people of, World War II and Vietnam and Korea, and now my generation with quite a few of those as well.
Yeah, our
Just
last lunch was about 450,
unbelievable.
and when I talked to the skipper before Christmas about the one on base in April, I said, we have like 1,300 on the roster, and he said, well, if all 1,300 show up, we'll figure out how to do it. We'll
Wow.
just figure it
He's a
out.
great supporter.
He's
He
been
is
very
so
supportive.
great.
He's
Yeah.
he's gotten you all, I think, the last 3 months, right? Meals, roll call, I think,
Well, so what he
as part of the normal.
right.
just-
So what he's been doing is when once a month they open up the galley on
Yeah.
base, and when I talked to him then also, he said, listen, if you've got some vets that want to come out here and sit and have lunch with these guys on that luncheon that don't have an ID and aren't on the list, give me their names and I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
And that was really, that tells a lot about how important he thinks that relationship is between those guys, all of us who have come before them, and those young men and women serving today, that he just really wants them to have
Yeah.
that opportunity. And that's why he invited us to do this lunch on base,
Yeah.
was to have that opportunity to have the young and the old. And he told me, he said, the reason I wanted to do it was when we had him speak in December the year before, he couldn't, he literally was there until the last person was done asking questions.
And he
Like,
was so nice
he
about
did
that.
not leave. He didn't act like he was in a hurry. Like, the place was cleaned up. Every table and chair was put up when the line finally finished that wanted to talk to him. And he said, and there's only one of me. So
Yeah.
if I bring him to the base and I have 100 of
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
that they can sit at a table. So he said, for the active duty that were invited to come have lunch with us, their thing was not to sit in a table together with their buddies, but it was to spread out
Right,
yeah.
and
right.
sit at a table with vets and talk to them and learn from each other, because the vets love to talk about, tell me about
Yeah,
the uniform,
yeah,
and
yeah.
when I was in, this is a uniform. It's really a meshing of the generations, and he saw the power in it, and it's just really, he is so super supportive
He's been
of everything.
They have a 9/11 ceremony
Yep.
on the base. I don't know if they've had that previously,
Yep.
but they have that going on. They had
Pearl
a
Harbor
December
Midway
7th
and-
Pearl Harbor
Yep,
remembrance.
we had several roll call vets
Um,
at that one.
He's gotten an air show back now next
Right.
year.
Yeah.
The air show will be here at the JRB for the first time in several years. So I think he's not only doing his mission of maintaining the base, I think he's also reaching out to the community, reaching out to veterans.
Aren't they gonna keep the
he's done a bang-up
air
job.
show here because of all of the traffic they got up at?
I'm not sure all the,
They may still have the Alliance Air Show. I assume that they will.
I do a lot of
think they're gonna
work
do
for
both.
Perot Jr.
Yep.
And the lady that calls and coordinates the cars getting here, I said, so are they going to still have the air show up there? And she said, with all of it's a big hub now for
Oh, yeah.
Amazon and
Right.
that was one of the problems because, FedEx, whenever they were going to land, they had to stop the air show
yeah.
to bring the airplanes
So she
in.
said it might be going to JRB.
Just the whole thing.
She
Which
said,
would be
okay.
better anyway.
yeah, she
Yeah.
said
It's
we just
better
can't.
anyway.
She said we've got too much commercial,
Yeah.
and she said that's what keeps this community going,
Yeah.
which
yeah,
is true.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it belongs back at
I,
On the
I
base, it
agree.
does.
I agree.
Yeah.
Alliance, I love Alliance. It's amazing. We were the first one in the country to have a commercial airport for just freight. It's fantastic, but we have a base with a lot of history here, going back to World War II, and of course Lockheed and General Dynamics, and I forget the name of the company
Convair
before
and
that.
Consolidated.
Consolidated
Consolidated,
Vaulting.
so
that
yes.
was the original one.
The B-24s being built here and other aircraft. Now the world class, the best in the world. It
But
just
you
makes
know,
all the sense that we have it
Perot's
here.
name with the Army Air Corps is we were trying to get that plane back from Pima.
B-36.
Yeah, and so when I was dealing with them, and it's still the correspondence is with the Army Air Corps, and the guy said, y'all had the plane there, and then you couldn't house it, and so we need somebody, the mayor or somebody. And I said, I'm working with Mr. Perot Jr., and he said, that'll do. All you need is his. If he says it's a done deal, and Perot, he said, I'll have the air show up here. And I'll bring that 36 back. I'll build a hangar to do it all. I got a lot of friends with a lot of money. But he said, I want all of those little air museums under one roof. And the guys out here at, whatchamacallit, they didn't want to do that. That stopped it right there. It was dead. Perot said, I'm out. It's either all here or not here. And he's pretty straight to the point
Yeah.
about it. So you can see both sides of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lois, whenever a few months ago at the Air Power Council board meeting, you brought some recruiters,
Yep.
a Navy and Army recruiter. We'd like to get them on the show pretty soon,
Yeah.
so they can kind of
Love for them to
tell the public what they told us.
speak about their issues.
Yeah, there's
they're
a lot of issues in the recruiting world.
they
trying
are
to get
they are
people.
struggling, but we're trying. We, meaning the Army Association, who I'm the Fort Worth guy for the Association of the U.S. Army, and I have a friend who's in sales, Jason Forrest, who's here in Fort Worth, Forrest Performance Group. One of the best sales training guys in the country, if not the world. Fantastic, amazing guy, and a patriot. And I asked him if he would be willing to mentor some of our recruiters, because that's what the recruiting battalion commander asked me, to
Yeah.
find some business guys that are in sales. And I went to Jason and said, this is your stick, Jason. Can you help out? Would you be willing to mentor? And he said, well, mentoring's great, but why don't I put them through my program? And I said, I don't think we can afford your program. We're a nonprofit, his program's worth it, but it's $4,000 or $5,000 per person to go through his training program. Well, he ended up offering to support as many recruiters as we could get into a classroom. So through the Air Power Foundation, I worked to get a class on the base. We ended up getting about 50 recruiters from all over Dallas-Fort Worth to come to JRB, Army types, Army recruiters, and put them through his sales training, 2 days in person, 90 days total. There's another 2-day engagement at the base. We just finished that 90-day program, had the graduation a couple of weeks ago, and their numbers have already tripled for that
Wow.
for that group.
That's good.
So it's a small thing, but we're looking to scale it and asking, since Jason did that out of his pocket and out of the kindness of his heart, maybe the Army Association could pay for another pilot for a larger part of the DFW recruiting battalion, Army, and we'll see how that works. I'm hoping to do that, and then maybe even get him into the schoolhouse. We took care of the recruiters at Christmas. We got about 70 families that we took care of. with the Operation Once in a Lifetime with Patrick Sowers. Do you know Patrick, Mary?
I don't think
He's a patriot. He's a sergeant, retired Army type, who has a Support Your Troops store in Plano. It's like a Goodwill store, a little bit nicer maybe, and all of the proceeds go to veteran charities. And Patrick does some amazing things. It's Operation Once in a Lifetime. We partnered with him, and he partners with GameStop and all of these huge corporations that provided toys and video games, and opened his store. His store was just 3 feet deep in toys, and the recruiters were able to come in and pick out toys for their kiddos. It was pretty neat. And then go home and wrap them, and it wasn't as if they were not from mom and dad. So the Army Association is doing some pretty cool things and trying to help the recruiters. We don't have a lot of Army here, mostly Navy and Air Force at the base.
Right.
But there is Army Reserve here. There's Army Reserve, a significant Army Reserve presence.
Yep.
There's an aviation maintenance unit in the Army Reserve out at the base. We do have some Army Reserve recruiting assets, and then of course the recruiters. That's our biggest Army types here in Fort Worth. So whatever we can do to help them, we're trying to help them too. And I recently got picked to be Army Reserve Ambassador, which is a pretty neat opportunity to try to help connect the community with the Army Reserve in there, because they tend to be in their reserve centers and do their thing, right? Just like the
Everybody knows
base.
what's going on.
And nobody knows what's going on, so we want to advocate for them and tell their story too, and connect them with city officials and county officials, and bring them on tours. And there's all kinds of things that we're going to start doing here in Fort Worth to kind of integrate, to bring the Army Reserve out of the shadows,
Right. Right.
including with Carrie. I was a little late to the punch this year with Holidays and Heroes, but I told her next year we're going to have 30 or 40 Army families participating. So I'm going to put her over 200 for sure next year. But there's a lot of neat stuff going on with the military here. A lot of ways for people to get involved. I'd love to tell people, more about that individually if they want to know about it, and help them connect with some of these organizations.
And what we'll do, we'll get all the different organizations that you're part of and put it in the information on the show today, so
That'd be
other
fantastic.
people can go and find it.
That'd be fantastic.
We've about run our time to the end, but we appreciate you being here.
Yes,
We
very
appreciate
much.
your
Appreciate
service
you
to our
guys.
country, and like so many other veterans, your service after the service to the community and to the other veterans and the military. And we
Thanks,
just
Rick.
appreciate so much you and Shelley for your dedication, because y'all are so involved and so plugged in to so many different things, and that's what we need, are more people like you that are great leaders and can get out there and sell the deal to the people. And
We need
it sounds
that.
like a lot of your training you had, with being PR part, of the military, really put you in the right place here in Fort Worth. So
It's a different season,
It
of
is.
life, and we're trying to take advantage of it and keep serving. That's what I've got on the license plate, of my cars. Keep serving. That's what we want to keep doing, and it's easy to do here because
It
patriots
is.
like you guys and so many in this community. It seems like every week or a couple times a month there is some activity going on.
Oh,
Some we're
every-
plugged
every-
into,
every
some we're
day.
not.
Yeah.
But there is just something, because people care about veterans and their military here, and this is indicative of that too. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you
Yeah.
for being here today.
And for all your
Absolutely.
service too. I know I
We wanna
see
see
these
you
guys
at-
all the time at these events, so I appreciate
Wanna
y'all
see you at roll call.
serving as well.
And Shelley sings too, doesn't she?
She does. She
Okay.
sings professionally.
She probably needs to
Oh,
sing the
we might
national
need to
anthem.
have her sing
Yeah,
that
she was
anthem.
Entertainer of the Year at the Johnny High Country Music Review
Wow.
in Arlington.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Female Vocalist of the Year there, and sang with
Oh,
Leanne
yeah.
Rhymes
Yeah.
and all the group that was there for years. And she would come back and sing every time I deployed. And so she has a beautiful voice.
You're starting a show just next
We're
week or
starting
so.
a country swing,
Western
country,
swing.
Western swing
Yeah.
music. I didn't
Oh, man.
realize till
all the history.
everybody was talking about it died off.
Yeah.
It's due to our government. 1944 in November, they issued in a cabaret tax. If you served food, liquor, or had a dance floor, it's 30%.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness.
30 cents on every dollar. That killed the dance halls.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
And if you didn't serve booze, it was 20% if you had a dance hall and food. I
That's a
mean,
big cut.
That
Yeah,
is.
that's
a
There's a high
huge-
profit margin
and that
on
went from
alcohol.
44 till 1965.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Well, Western Swing, you know, originated here with
Right
the
here.
light crust doughboys right here
Well,
in Fort Worth.
That's
and Bob
the
Wills.
Bob
Bob
faction.
Wills.
My
Yeah.
faction
And
is
Turkey,
Yeah.
Milton
Texas.
Brown.
Okay.
Milton
Well, yep,
Brown
yep,
actually was the,
Yep.
I think, the godfather of it.
Yep. Yep.
And he only lived, he was 33 years old when he died.
I think he played, right? He was
Yeah,
with the
Milton
Light Crust
Brown and the-
Doughboys as
yeah,
well.
Bob
yeah,
Wills
he
and
and Bob
Milton
Wills
Brown
played
were
together.
together.
Yep.
It all started in the 5600 block of White Settlement Road,
Yep.
Crystal Springs Dance Pavilion.
Yep.
And during the war, it was put off limits by the base. There have been so many stabbings and shootings. They called it, it got a nickname, Bucket of Blood Club.
Oh my
My
gosh.
goodness.
And all the soldiers and airmen were put off, it was off limits to all the military.
Well, she loves to sing, so if you have any opportunities for her,
Okay.
you know,
We'll-
Yeah,
we'll-
we're gonna
we'll
need
plug
to
her
get
in.
her
Love that.
looped
Yeah,
in for a
yeah.
luncheon.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
that'd be great. That'd be
We
great.
have a luncheon on the 20.
Is it the 27th or 28th? I can
Whatever
never
the
remember.
last Friday is
the
of
last
the month.
Friday of January now.
We're on top of this stuff, you can tell.
Yeah, well, I get my dates so confused, but it's the 27th because Monday the 30th. It's a Monday, so it's the 27th, and it'll be. We're thinking right now of Vietnam focus because in January we usually do a Vietnam vet pinning. So for those veterans that had not yet got the welcome home pin and certificate, and there's fewer and fewer of them. Most of our guys we've gotten over the last few years, but we'll do a pinning. So I usually try to have a Vietnam vet speaker. I am working one right now. I won't disclose it until I know it's 100%, but I'm about 85% right now. It just boils down to if there's a speaking fee or not, because we don't pay speaking fees. We're not set up to, we don't have that kind of budget to pay people to come speak. But if I can get this individual, I hope to be able to tell you next week that it's a done deal and this is
Very
who our
good.
speaker will be. So I'm almost there. Almost there.
And that's the last Friday of the month, and then Monday, the 30th, is Military Day at the Stock Show and Rodeo. The 4th of February, we have the TET reunion out at Abilene, and it's open for all veterans. And then in April, we're going to have out at Sweetwater. All this stuff's happening way out
Yeah,
there.
no,
in
it's
big
in my,
country.
my hometown.
Yeah,
It's in my,
we'll have the
That's where
WASP
the WASP Museum
The
is,
WASP
right?
reunion
Sweetwater.
WASP
is
reunion.
in
Yep, yep.
April. So
That is a special place
It
if you've
is.
never been to the
It
WASP
is.
Museum. Yeah.
So you
Amazing.
know about Sammy Ball.
Yes. Yep.
I got that.
Sling and Sammy.
I got to actually go out. A guy said, "Hey, you want to go out and meet a real TCU pro?" And I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Sweetwater." And I said, "Sammy Ball?" He was on a tractor. He was like 90. Every word was a cuss word. Every single word. I mean, you, rah, rah, rah. I said, Jesus Christ, what pissed him off?
That guy. What a ball player.
Oh, yeah. I interviewed a guy one time that was from Sweetwater, and he said Sammy's daddy would hang a tire up on a tree branch, and Sammy would start throwing it between, and he said it got down to a trailer tire where it didn't have but about 1/16 of an inch, and he had never moved the tire. It was just
Yeah,
some of his
unbelievable.
records, his punting, are
Yeah,
still
yeah,
in the
yeah,
NFL.
Yeah, yeah.
They've never been broken.
He's a legend at TCU.
Yeah.
Legend.
lot of
He's-
lot
And
of
he must
history.
have
their
been-
field house has some large photos of him in action.
How tall was
Now,
he?
I mean, as we speak, I couldn't tell you. Yeah, I never got to meet him, but
I've got a picture of him, and he had just gotten married.
there's some characters out there. Buster
And
Welch
the
and
door-
some of the ranchers. They're They're hardworking.
Look
but
how
they're
tall he
characters.
is. That door's got to
Oh
be
my
6 foot.
goodness, yeah, it's got to be 6'5" or
My
something.
goodness.
I mean, that was the day he got married.
And if you're out in Sweetwater in March, you have to check out the rattlesnake
Oh,
roundup.
yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. I grew up going to it every year.
It's
We
gotten
took our family and in-laws
so
out there
commercialized
last year.
Since you were a kid, you know.
Yep.
It's
It is a
still
little bit
fun
more.
trip.
It
but
is. It's a lot
not
of fun.
like it used to be
Just-
even in the 70s when I started going to
Yeah,
it. But
yeah. It's interesting to see snakes in a pit a foot deep and people walking around milking them. And
Or even
it's so
eating.
West Texas.
Yeah.
I love it.
I
I
took
love
a
it.
couple of my kids, and I hate snakes. And this guy was walking around. He worked there, and he set this burlap bag down.
Full
And
of
I felt
snakes.
something hitting my foot. I about come unglued.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I was upset.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "It's just
They
snakes." And I said,
handle them
"Oh,
like
my
it's
God."
nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
I swore I'd never go back. The next year I went back.
It's addictive.
It's a good time.
Well, Lewis,
Only in
thank you for
Texas.
being on the show.
No, thank you. I
Larry,
just
thank you
enjoyed
for-
chatting
Yes.
with you all.
For hosting us, and just remember classic
Classic Auto
auto
Detail.
detail.
And we're having our first meeting for the 37th bike drive, January 13th.
Got the bike drive, and then a 10-year birthday for the Fort Worth Memories
Yeah.
Group. So
Yep, Fort Worth Memories, 10 years.
a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff.
Well,
It's
we've
a
been-
hidden gem back here. I'm going to poke around a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah,
When we're
there's a lot
done.
of stuff back
It's
there.
amazing.
But we've enjoyed having you here today.
Thank you,
and,
Rick. Enjoyed
look
being
forward to hearing more from you and,
Yep.
and getting involved in some of the organizations you're with.
Yep.
And thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
Mary,
Thanks for
we'll see
y'all's.
you next week.
Next week.
And Larry, we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see y'all next week on Hometown Heroes.